Let's take a quick look at a beautifully presented 20th anniversary edition of Voltron Lion Force. As probably a lot of toy collectors know, sometimes you go through kind of like binging and purging phases with your collection. I sold my vintage Lion Force Voltron a couple years back and have pretty much regretted it every day since. So it was time to have this version of Voltron back in the collection. I found a seller who gave it to me gave this version of the Voltron Lion Force to me for a very good price. Really nice guy. Thank you, Matthew, who also happens to have a channel here on YouTube under, I believe it's called Retro Now. Excellent channel. Check it out, please. But yeah, thanks to Matthew, I have Voltron back in my collection. When I was a kid back in the 80s, I had a short list of favorite toys, the best toys from my childhood. It's not a ironic list. It's not a surprising list. It has Optimus Prime. It has the USS Flag. It's got Castle Grayskull with He-Man or Skeletor on it. Voltron is right up there. Voltron was I kind of feel like my most impressive toy as a kid. And even as a kid, I felt that it was as much like a trophy as it was a toy. So I was very delicate with it. Needless to say, because of all that chrome and the die cast, there was paint chipping. There's a lot of issues with original vintage Voltrons nowadays after all this time, which is why I went with picking up sort of a reissue or a commemorative version of him, because I want him to be complete. I want him to be in good condition. Getting a vintage like Matchbox Voltron is so expensive, and it's just not worth it, honestly. Which is crazy to say that when I'm talking about how valuable this is to me on many levels. But for the price and getting a brand new Voltron, I could not possibly do better than this. So anyway, this masterpiece collection of Voltron Lion Force comes in what looks like a giant book with a really nice spine here with a beautifully done image from the cartoon. There's like a texturing on it. It really does feel like a really big hardback book. This is put out by Toynami. This is just printed on. Obviously, it's not pages. When you open the front, it is a magnetized front cover. You see Black Lion, red and green on this opening page, along with this little intro, if you want to read it. And if you open up the back, you see the other guys, the blue and yellow lion, as well as this certificate of authenticity. They only made 15,000 of this. God, I love having this again. And the way you get these two sleeves out is just by... There's two little punched out holes at the bottom. If you push, the sleeves or the shelves, internal shelves just come out. Anyway, let me get him out and we'll take a look at him. And this particular iteration of Voltron is even better than I had hoped. Like, hands down, I am blown away by this. I mean, part of that is probably because I didn't do a deep dive into what they were how they were going to update the Lions for this version of Voltron. But yeah, I am blown away. There are upgrades here as far as articulation, as far as some of the molding and design work, and it still feels like vintage Voltron at the very same time. So I guess what am I trying to... Missing link G1 Transformers would be the closest thing I could think of to what these feel like out of the box, just kind of fiddling with them as I set them up. So inside the box, after you get the lions out, you have a very, very basic instruction manual. You have the sword that is super, super chromed out. And you have the shield. So, okay, let's start with the little guys. I can't off the top of my head tell you design-wise all the differences between the vintage and these guys. There are differences, I am certain of that. The heads on the little guys, is it a ball joint? It's not. So they just rotate. They're simple, they're smaller. The tail kind of slides in and reveals itself just by pulling it up like that. The legs, obviously, if you've ever had a Voltron, you know how the transformation goes with this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with that. If you've found your way onto this video, you've laid hands on a vintage Voltron, I'm pretty sure. But the legs, because of the design, don't give a lot, but there is a little bit of like a abduction movement on all the legs, more so on the bigger guys, but they do give a little bit, which is nice for posing and just so that you don't accidentally snap something off. Like they give a little bit, which is really, really nice. And these guys are all die cast. The legs are just chromed plastic, but basically everything else on them is die cast. The red line is more squared off. The green one, I do recall that from my foggy memory that he was always kind of rounded off, kind of a cylindrical body. Same movement and articulation as the red lion. The tail is inside, just pulls out. A little bit of give on all the legs. The jaws are not spring-loaded, and I kind of remember them being spring-loaded, but I don't care at all about that. All right, some of the bigger guys now. I do not remember Blue Lion having this awesome molded, multicolored panel on his head. I love that. If I'm wrong and it was there, forgive me. I do my reviews based on my memory. I'm more of a nostalgia guy than I am like a toy historian. So I like the fact that I don't really recall, but I think that's a nice new surprise. These heads are on ball joints, which to the best of my recollection is an upgrade. This is just one big piece of die cast, which I love. Does this tail? Yeah, the tail's insert. The legs, I remember them not being this lengthy on the original. I'm not complaining, this is something I've noticed. Same thing with the yellow lion. The legs give a little bit. This piece, I can't tell if it's supposed to slide up or not. I know it did on the original. I don't know if it does on this one. Maybe not. Also, he's just another one big hunk of die cast with elongated legs. Again, it does change things a little bit. And lastly, we have the black lion, which actually is smaller, or rather the size discrepancy between the black lion and the other lions was much more obvious in the vintage. He's a hair bigger than the two legs, the yellow and blue lion. In certain poses, the legs do give out a little bit, but that's because, again, he's just so much of him is metal. Head is on a ball joint, and he's got a neck. He's got he's got 3 points of articulation just in his neck. The wings seem to be a little bit smaller. Again, don't care. These are little design choices that I'm noticing, and I like, and I also like that I'm remembering them not being like I'm picking up the differences, and that's kind of cool to me. Legs are very chromed out. These big shoulder bits do give a little bit on purpose. It's not like a faulty manufacturing. They're meant to give a little bit. So he's going to be a little bit more posable in robot mode. And that, of course, is what I'm dying to see. So let me get them all together and... And yeah, he is glorious and updated in the best possible way, I think. So yeah, first off, proportions are way better. He's just a more dynamic looking and proportioned Voltron. So first off, while I still want to be delicate with him because of all the chrome and the heaviness of the die cast and this and that, um, he is more posable. As you can see, like the hips, we have a lot of planes of motion at his hips, which are great. The knees bend because these heads are on ball joints. They kind of give the illusion of like an ankle tilt. Um, the everything about his proportions. The legs are longer. The chest is brought in a little bit. The arms can abduct a little bit. Well, a lot, but I don't want to play with it too much because this arm seems to pop out. Everything is tight, but I feel like there might be a locking mechanism I haven't reached. The wings on the back are very undersized compared to what I remember, but also not something I think is a big deal. The sword and the shield are gripped fine by themselves with just like the jaws of the red and green lion, but there's also a peg in the roof of the mouth of both of them, or a peg hole and a peg on each of the weapons, so they sit very, very snugly. He is heavy, he is shiny, he's amazing. He's probably about a foot tall. Oh, there's a lot of weight to him. If you're an 80s toy enthusiast or pop culture enthusiast and you have any sort of history with this toy, I can't. First off, you need a Voltron in your collection if you do collect. And secondly, okay, it's kind of a mixed bag because I do feel like I do eventually need to get another vintage Voltron, but wow, this is a special version of him that is absolutely worth the money if you can find him for a decent price. A very it's a really interesting mesh of, like I said, an updated version. This is definitely a newish toy, but it feels so retro and so 80s and such like respectful homage to the original. So Toynami, thank you. This is wonderful. And Matthew, again, thank you for this. Could not be happier with this. And that is just a quick look at the 20th anniversary Lion Force Voltron from Toynami.